I'm standing in about 5 inches of water. The governor addressed multiple issues, but the crux of the argument was this: protesters need to leave the camp as soon as possible. Now, just behind me is the north entrance to the Oceti-Sakowin camp. We're waiting to see who will stay in the camp after that and what police will do. Workers came into the camp almost immediately on Thursday to start cleaning. They hope to be done as soon as Monday. The most significant challenge? The mud. Protesters were upset while they met with members of the Corps and other state agencies that accompanied them. The protesters grew increasingly frustrated as the meeting progressed. The Morton County Sheriff's Department thinks it'll take drivers about 15 minutes to get from this point to the southern checkpoint on the Cannonball Bridge. Bobcats, backhoes, and bulldozers entered the camp and started the process of removing trash and snow. Get back! The front lines of the Dakota Access Pipeline fight have been a high-stress environment. It's asked long hours from our state law enforcement.
It's day 175. I have over 1,400 hours of just protest time.
John Moll is a deputy with the Morton County Sheriff's Office, and he's been on the front lines many times during the conflict. He's dealing with a different set of issues than he's used to.
The little razor wire frisbees getting thrown at you, the possibility of losing an eye.
Every time it seems the pipeline conflict is reaching a point of meaningful conclusion, something comes up.
It's frustrating, and my laughter isn't out of haha, it's funny. It's either laugh or cry. I mean, it's frustrating.
But the efforts of the last 2 days show good faith by both sides.
Everybody's working together and collaborating together. And for us, it's all about just cleaning up the land and making sure that the stuff that is here doesn't end up in the river.
When the camp is doing some cleanup efforts, we need to respond to some of their good faith efforts and make sure that we're doing our part to show good faith.
Moll hopes it relieves some of the stress he, his fellow officers, and their families have been going through. We reached out to Standing Rock Chairman Dave Archambault about the barricade removal, but had not heard back from him at time of air. The Backwater Bridge has been closed since October 28th.
Good evening. Authorities arrested dozens of Dakota Access Pipeline protesters today, including a former congressional candidate. Many of those who had abandoned the old camp in the floodplain moved to higher ground, which happens to belong to the company building the pipeline. Law enforcement converged on the new camp with Humvees and front-end loaders to push protesters back on Highway 1806. Bo Evans was at the new camp before police closed in.
Lift up on it a little bit. The new camp, with 7 teepee frames representing the 7 tribes, was erected on a hill Wednesday morning, a quarter-mile from the original Oceti-Sakowin camp. A group of activists who said they wanted to establish a more peaceful and prayerful protest presence built the new dwelling.
We want to make it more spiritual. We want to make this a difference from the old Sakowin. We want to call this camp the Last Child Camp.
This group of activists say the idea for the camp came in a vision about 2 weeks ago. This new encampment didn't go unnoticed by law enforcement, who assembled a small force of vehicles and officers to raid it before more demonstrators could put down roots.
Then decided that we would move into the area and clear the protesters from that hill, at which point that was done on that private land.
This is just what Crazy Horse went through, you know, when he took his last breath, you know, but he fought to his last breath so that we can be who we are, live our lives the way it was intended by the Creator.
Before all the teepees were up, a convoy of Humvees and heavy equipment pushed protesters who gathered on Highway 1806 back to the entrance of the new protest camp.
And it's unfortunate that they decided to trespass on there, really forcing law enforcement into the situation of having to move into this area and clear them from the hill.
Officers made their way up the hill to the camp and threatened to arrest the occupants for trespassing. 76 of the activists were taken into custody, including former Democratic congressional candidate Chase Iron Eyes. Reporting in Cannonball, Bo Evans, NBC North Dakota News. The governor addressed multiple issues, but the crux of the argument was this: protesters need to leave the camp as soon as possible. Burgum signed an executive order reaffirming the February 22nd deadline for protesters to leave the camp, but insisted that people's safety is now in danger. Cleanup is already underway, but the Army Corps will be stepping in to expedite the process and going into the camp Thursday to complete an assessment of the work that needs to be done. Burgum says the waste at the camp is a more imminent threat to the water supply of the Standing Rock Sioux than anything else.
environmental threats to clean water in the Missouri right now is the camp itself, because we've got 5 or 6 months of human waste, debris.
Whatever the cost, the governor says the state will pay initially, but after the fact, he hopes to recoup most of it, if not all, from the federal government or other sources. I am at the Oceti-Sakowin protest camp, and as you can see, things have changed. A little bit different conditions than when we were here last. The ice and snow has started to melt, and it is very deep. That is my whole entire shoe under the water. And I think it's even deeper in some places. Obviously, this is causing some issues for the cleanup effort. Here's the inside of one of the teepees. That's just, there's water in there. You can't live there. So people have obviously been picking up in the clean camp. There's trash and debris everywhere. It looks a lot different. Obviously, there's a lot more open spaces. At certain points in time during the last 6 months of protests, it was just completely full of tents. There was barely any space. The roadways were clogged and congested.
That's what we're trying to do here.
You were supposed to ask if you could even come in, not tell us when.
Miscommunication seems to have played a role in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers being denied access to federal property by protesters. Members of the Oceti-Sakowin protest camp thought they would be negotiating the Corps' entrance. Representatives of the Corps seem to think that had already happened.
We know that you guys are doing a good job of starting the cleanup, but we know that the weather could change on us and force our hand and start flooding earlier. So we think there's a time frame.
The Corps continues to warn about the life-threatening potential of a spring flood.
We need a date where you agree, where we can trust your word, that you will not come and respond in such a fashion. And we need to know what that response is going to be.
Protesters believe they can handle the situation themselves.
Why would you think we wouldn't clean it up?
When the meeting ended around 1 p.m., protesters denied members of the Corps access to the camp. The message from the state remains the same. It's time to leave the Dakota Access protest camps.
First priority is the life, health, and safety of everyone in this camp as it relates to potential flooding. And the second is preventing an environmental disaster by getting this camp cleaned up as quickly as possible.
Camp cleanup continues as protesters and state contractors rush to get everything out of the camp before a potential flood. Some protesters are firm. They won't be leaving.
I have no fear. I'm living in the purest form I can. If there are people who want to harm me, then that's on them.
However, others were less sure of their decision, but still anguished as they cleaned out the camp.
There's obviously despair, that's true. There's like a deep sadness, like this was beautiful what was built here.
The 2 p.m. deadline remains firm from the Corps and the state. Bachmeyer says both will do everything in their power to help everyone who wants to leave the camp before the final hour by providing buses and setting up a safe zone just south of the camp.
Our goal is that everyone who wants to vacate the camps prior to 2 p.m. tomorrow has every resource available to do so.
All who remain are subject to arrest. Reporting in Cannonball, Bo Evans, NBC North Dakota News. Monica, just a little bit after 4, what was a mostly peaceful day ended with law enforcement advancing on protesters. Now, just behind me is the north entrance to the Oceti-Sakowin camp, and law enforcement pushed protesters back about 100 yards before stopping. We were told that if we were in law enforcement's way, we would be arrested too, that we were not protected, even though we were not in the camp past the eviction date. Now, after that, law enforcement backed off. They backed off about 100 yards north of the gate, and the protesters returned to the gate. And just about 30 minutes ago, law enforcement retreated back beyond the barrier, and protesters returned to the camp. Now, before we go, I just want to show you a little bit of what the camp looks like right now, some live new video. As you can see, there are still plenty of structures here. And while there were some burned throughout the day, you can still see some of the smoke coming from different places and the ash around. There is still a lot of cleanup, and the latest word that I have from the governor's office is that it will start at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. But that could be subject to change with the governor's press conference along with Morton County Sheriff Kyle Kirkmeyer. We will have updates for you as the night continues. mixed emotion as the deadline to leave camp loomed.
It comes down to it, then I'll let them arrest me.
My plan is to exit before 2 p.m.
Well, my plan is to stay here.
Protesters burned structures, they say for ceremonial purposes. While the land is owned by the federal government, some protesters say it belongs to Native Americans.
This trees were void, so this land is ours. By law, by right, by inherent right. This land is ours.
While not everyone is choosing to stay, they are working up until the deadline.
My mission here today is helping evacuate elders and children, and that's what I'm working on this morning.
It is just past 2 p.m. here at the Oceti-Sakowin camp. We're waiting to see who will stay in the camp after that and what police will do.
To simply leave while being a resistance camp in order to delegitimize what we're doing. Right?
Law enforcement say they want to avoid conflict.
We don't want to come in here and arrest people, but we understand that there's going to be people that are not going to leave.
After 4 p.m., a brief confrontation between protesters and law enforcement took place, and 11 demonstrators were arrested. A force of close to 200 officers moved in Thursday morning and cleared out those who remained. The Oceti-Sakowin protest camp is closed. Bo Evans, NBC North Dakota News. Reclamation efforts are fast and furious now that the base for DAPL protest activity has been vacated. How long it will take is anybody's guess, but those associated with the project want it completed as soon as possible. Work crews are accelerating the removal of what remains of a once bustling community.
If we start falling behind, I'm going to try and get us more trucks so we can speed this up.
Logan Thompson is in charge of Prairie View Excavating's work crew at the camp. He's one of several contractors assigned cleanup duty.
Just basically try and get this site as garbage-free as possible, as fast as possible.
Load after load of trash is being trucked out as fast as front loaders can dump debris.
We want to ensure that we mitigate any trash, debris, waste, or anything else from ending up in the water and contaminating that water.
Workers came into the camp almost immediately on Thursday to start cleaning. They hope to be done as soon as Monday. The most significant challenge? The mud.
The mud has been killing us, absolutely. It's just, you can't get the trucks in and out fast, and that just slows things down.
Everything left here isn't being trashed.
The tribe is out there currently. Members of the tribe or their contractor are removing raw lumber and anything that is usable and taking it out and reusing it as they can.
Cleanup will continue through the weekend because while the water isn't rising yet, this area has always been a floodplain. Barbara Middow is excited to hit the road.
I've been in Florida for 5 weeks and I've missed my casino, and now the road's open, so I'm on my way.
Law enforcement is taking another step in their phased opening of Highway 1806. Pilot cars will be escorting drivers 5 at a time. The Morton County Sheriff's Department thinks it'll take drivers about 15 minutes to get from this point to the southern checkpoint on the Cannonball Bridge. It was mixed emotions from the Standing Rock tribe.
Our communities have been waiting for this. From the beginning, I felt that it was unnecessary, that it was even closed, and even today, I think it's not necessary to have pilot cars.
The number one thing has been public safety this whole time, and to make sure that is maintained, that is the only reason.
Middaw is hoping the Dakota Access Pipeline conflict is coming to an end.
I think it was a sad situation for the state of North Dakota. I really do. I think that even in Florida, we were on the national news all the time.
Sheriff Kirkmeyer expressed hope that if this phased opening went well, the highway could be fully open by this time next week. Wait times are expected to be about 20 to 30 minutes, but law enforcement is expressing confidence that it will go down by the end of the weekend.